Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
Back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio, and with us today we have returning guest Robin McCray, who is the chief director and overlord of the um, international hominology of forest people, or Sasquatch people, as it is here in North America, and she's got the North American division. And we just thought we'd have her on here to catch up on all the latest Bigfoot news on her end, and of course, the fact that you just had a sighting about an hour ago doesn't hurt. So with that, let's welcome back Robin McCray. Welcome
Thank
back
you
to the
so
show,
much. Always good to be back here. One of my favorite shows.
and give us a break, guys. It's really late night. It's really late night where she's at, and it's kind of late night here too. So if we're going blah, 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 that's why.
Yeah.
And I ran out of coffee. I'm on tea, which doesn't always work all that well.
Hey, as long as I got soda, I'm good.
So getting back to the actual exciting news here. So like an hour ago, you had one on your property.
Yeah, we have an attached garage, and in the garage we have kennels for not all of our dogs, but for some of the bigger dogs. And they normally about 7 o'clock they go out to go to the bathroom and do whatever they want to do. And it's dark here right now at 7 o'clock. It's still dark. And I went to let them out, and Pat, my husband, was with me, and I cut him loose. We have a Pyrenees who's all white, and the dogs just went crazy. And the Foot's normally like the Pyrenees anyway. Like they're forever bringing her stuff and tossing it over the fence to her and playing with her. And she'll be coming up to the house with all kinds of bizarre stuff they've given her. And she went to the back of the fence and she's just barking her butt off. And I'm like, I saw this white thing in the woods. It was walking out, and then it dropped down to all fours right in front of the tree line at the back of the property. And so when I first looked at her, it was straight past her, only quite a ways back to the tree line. And I thought, why does she, at first it was dark and I just saw this white blob, and I'm thinking, I saw it coming out of the woods, and then I looked at it past her and I'm like, this thing is so much bigger than what she is. Even with it being far away, it was still way bigger than she is. And it moved at lightning speed. It went straight across in front of the tree line, turned and went to go into the woods. And as it went to go into the woods, it started to stand up. Well, all the houses on this road are like an acre or more parcels.
Hmm.
And 2 doors down, the people there have a black dog. And I saw the black dog run across my neighbor's property over to where I saw the white Bigfoot go into the woods. And this dog is barking and barking and barking. And then all of a sudden, just dead quiet. Like it didn't hurt the dog at all. But you could see where the dog stopped, turned around, tucked its tail, and went running home. And it never made a whimper, never made a sound. It went screaming and barking to all of a sudden dead quiet. And I said to Pat, I said, oh my God, there's a Bigfoot back there. And he's like, seriously? And I'm like, yeah, it just ran like at lightning speed. It was upright, dropped to all fours, ran across the backyard, and then up on its legs again. And so Pat was looking, and it turned around and came back out of the woods, and he saw it as well. And then there was a black one that was over. My neighbor has the shed, and it kept peeking its head around the shed. So yeah, it was pretty funny. It was like, okay,
So it's
but
not a tree peeker; it's a shed peeker.
it's a shed peeker. He goes there all the time. It's always active here. Like we might get a couple days that it's relatively quiet, but it stays pretty consistent with some type of being here, whether it's a Bigfoot or something else. And lately they've been pretty active. I mean, when I was sick, they would stand outside the window, and I always keep one window open. And at that time, I had two windows open, and they would stand outside each window and they would chant the whole time I was sick. They would do this all night. And when they would chant, I'd feel better. For whatever reason, I would actually, you'd feel all tingly, and then you would feel better, like something was being done. And they did that every night for like 3 or 4 nights. And then they stopped, and then they were back like a week or so later doing the same thing.
Hmm. So they were aware that you were sick because they're changing
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing we were talking about earlier is that the apparent ramp up in general activity all over the place, not just on your property. And you've been hearing this from other people.
Yeah. As most people know about me, I help a lot of people. I work with a lot of people. Even if it's just they need to talk and download what's going on so they don't think they're crazy or if they have questions or whatever. So I get contacted a lot. And I have had just several people get hold of me, even in the last 2 or 3 weeks. When I was sick, I was down where I couldn't talk to anybody. And then as soon as I got better, it was like a backlog of calls. And then I'm still getting them in. And everybody's like, they're popping up here, they're popping up there. And this person had this sighting, this person had that, or they're coming onto their property where they never have before. And they're just wanting to know, how do they interact? How do they live with them around them and not have problems? I mean, you can live with them around you. I've done it my whole life. You have to have that mutual respect. Otherwise you have problems. You
Yeah.
really do. And so
I know one of the people in your backlog was actually somebody that had contacted me, and I was waiting for you to get well enough to be able to talk to her and help her with her problem. So I can only imagine how many more of those you had lined up.
It's been really busy. In fact, I felt bad. I have talked to the one that you're talking about. I've talked to her a couple times now. Really super sweet lady. We were going to get together and talk this week because she's been very patient with, I've been able to help her on and off, but not as much as I would like just because I've been sick. And then my uncle passed away. So I got tied up, where that was a little bit crazy. And then my grandson was born. So yeah, she's on my hit list to get hold of her. So I got to get hold of her tomorrow. I have this list like this, of these people, and I love them all. I'm very blessed that they even want to talk to me, so it's definitely not a complaint. I just don't like, letting anybody down or whatever. So I try to get back with everybody as quick as I can.
Well, I just get worried when they're in a situation where they're highly alarmed about it. And
Exactly.
I give them as much information as I can, and I'm still like, well, I'm not. If I was you, I wouldn't be too worried, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to put you in touch with Robin.
Yeah, and a lot of it, like especially with her as well, a lot of it is not understanding what they're doing.
Yeah.
They have their own ways. They're not our ways. They're different. Their things mean different than what ours do. We might have a same mannerism, but there's two different meanings there. So it's really helpful if you're able to get a kind of an idea of what's going on. Then if you still have problems, then we know which way to go with it and how to go about handling it.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's always handy to have somebody that can actually be able to get a hold of them and mind speak with them and ask them what the heck's going on. Then you
yeah,
get some kind of a grip on what the situation is and if there is actually a conflict. And in a lot of cases, what I usually default to is that they're just basically letting you know that they're around there. And
yeah,
in the case like we're talking about with that lady, they weren't being aggressive at all. They were keeping an eye on her because she doesn't have good health, and her husband is gone for a long period. She's by herself, and that's when they were coming up and tapping on the house like, "Hey, we're keeping an eye on you. We're around here."
let her know. I'm like, have they done this, this, and this? And she's like, no. And I said, okay. So then I started talking to them. And that was really helpful because I could get a little bit better idea of why they're doing what they're doing. Which one's doing it? Is it one that knew her before? Is this somebody new? Why are they doing it? And I think that's helpful. And, hopefully that's given her a little bit of peace. And I'm going to continue to work with her. Like I said, it's been unfortunate that, at the timing, I was just getting over being really sick. So, it kind of slowed me down a little bit, but we were able to have a couple of really good conversations, and I look forward to more of them. Like I said, I'll probably be trying to get hold of her tomorrow. We had planned on and kind of set a date tentatively for during the week last week, but then things got a little bit out of control. So and she knew it. I stayed in touch with her to let her know, like, I don't like leaving people hanging. And so that made it really hard. So I was able to, let her know this is what's going on. I will get back with you as soon as I can. So
what is going on?
Well, what isn't going on normally around here? No, it was just, a matter of I had death in the family. I was still sick.
No, with her situation.
Oh, with hers, it really isn't as dire. It's not at this point, unless they've done something in the last week or two that I'm not aware of. It's more a matter of there's one that's extremely protective of her, wants her to know he's around. And there are other ones around there as well. And it's kind of like everybody trying to get to know her, but it's hard for her because when she's by herself and these things are happening and you don't know what's going on and you're not able to mind speak with them, it's scary.
Yeah.
It can be scary even if you do know what's going on, I don't care who you are. At some point, you're going to be fearful. You are. And so I think in her case, we have one that is very much attached as far as wanting to care for her and wants to make sure that she knows, like, he would be knocking and pounding or whatever, and she would be alone. And she'd be like, none of this happened when I had somebody here with me. Now all of a sudden it's going on. And I think in the beginning, possibly she was taking that it was a situation where he was trying to harm her. And
Yeah.
it was actually the very opposite.
Yeah.
And so, like I told her, she said, I like to go out and work in the garden, and I'm not sure, or out in the yard, and I don't even know if I should do that. And I said, certainly do that. Go about your business, continue living your life.
Yep.
Go out. And we talked about different things to do and not to do. And I said, he's not looking to try to hurt you. He's actually being protective. But again, their ways are not our ways. So, they're thinking they're being protective. And on our end, she's fearful because of what's going on. So it's just a matter of a meeting in the middle and, kind of understanding their ways. And then I'm talking to him to kind of make him understand what it's making her feel like. And kind of mediate the situation.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to me, and I've heard this pattern a bunch of times before, where the only time they're around the property or doing anything is when there's nobody else around there except for usually lone female, and in all these cases, whether male or female, it's somebody that has bad health.
They really are protective. And they are, most of them, and I'm not going to say all, because as we talk about on every show, and I always say this anytime I'm on a show, they're not all good. They're not all bad. Just like with us, you have good ones, you have bad ones. So that being said, they do try to be protective when you've got a situation where you've got somebody that's in poor health, and they are more protective of women than they are men, strictly because in their culture, the men will take care of the women. So
Right.
like, let's say, you've got a huge clan there, and one of the clan members leaves to go off to hunt, and his mate's there. The others are going to, surround her, protect her while she's by herself.
Yeah.
So in that particular case, they're looking at her and they're going, okay, your husband's not there and you're by yourself. Okay, there's nobody there to take care of you while you're sick. So we're going to stick around. We're going to make sure you're okay. So when somebody would leave and she was by herself, and then he'd start the knocking. The only thing that gave me any pause for concern, and I told him that, it was not acceptable, and we'll see how he does it. But she at one time thought that he had tried, I believe she said that he had tried to open the door,
Mm-hmm.
And that's not okay. I mean, if they don't have permission, you don't, it's like with anything else, they don't get to do it. And so I did tell him, I said, you scared her. And he said, that was not my intention. And I said, you don't have permission. And like I tell everybody, let them know, that you don't allow this, or you don't want them to do that. Depending on the individual is how well they listen. Just like with our people,
people that don't know anything about the situation or what they're dealing with, for all they know, it's some kind of man-eating monster out there,
Exactly.
and it's trying to get them or something. They don't realize that it's like, no, actually, they're watching you all the time, and he's very well aware that your health is not good, and there's absolutely no one here to keep an eye on you right now. So he's trying to reassure you, hey, you're not alone.
Doing. And, I think he tried to come in to check on her is what I think he was trying to do. But you have individuals where, and I've worked with some where I've said, okay, this is not going to fly. You're not doing this or whatever. And, they're respectful. I'm respectful of them. And so they try to be respectful of me. And if I put boundaries out, I have groups that will literally, not cross that line. But then I've also seen people, and I've worked with some that they just don't care. They're going to do whatever they want. But again, they are a type of people. That's the hardcore truth. And even in our people, we have people that listen, follow the rules, follow the laws. And then we have people that break the laws and don't follow the rules. So it's, again, goes back to an individual basis.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the problem with, you can get basic ideas of what their behavior is like and whatnot, but they're all still individuals. So you can't be 100% sure, unless, of course, you can mind speak with them, or their language, you can talk that.
It doesn't always help. It helps. It does help a lot. Like, I think about that now and then, and if I couldn't, oh my gosh, it would make everything so much harder. It really and truly would.
No, really? No kidding.
Yeah, it would make it really hard. I mean, they give me some good intel.
All I can do is guess based on behavior. I can't actually talk to them.
Yeah, but you call me and I talk to him for you.
Yeah, well, there you go. You're the
And
intermediary.
they say, bring bacon.
Yeah, bring more bacon.
Just bring bacon. We don't care what you do. Just bring bacon.
Bacon good.
Yep, bacon good.
Well, they didn't even ask for it that one time. I just suggested it. As long as I'm bringing apples and pears, do you guys want some bacon too? Yeah, bacon's good.
And they're fond of chocolate chip cookies. They've swiped so many cookies and plates, it's ridiculous.
Well, there's that classic caveman story of the Cookie Monster where they are having the revival meeting and the Cookie Monster grabbed the whole big giant plate of cookies and ran across the revival meeting tent with it, causing everybody to panic and freak out.
I told you that time, I was still living in Michigan, and Pat and I had just moved in together, and he was at work, and I had made cookies, and the kids were in the bedroom, and they were watching a movie or something. And so I put cookies on a plate for them, and I took it in their bedroom and I gave it to them. They're like, "Oh, thanks, Mom." And they're eating the cookies and everything. I walked, and I had probably 2 dozen more cookies on another plate. I walked from their bedroom back into the kitchen. The plate's gone. The cookies are gone. There wasn't even a crumb. And I'm like, "How did you do this?" So I go back in the bedroom and I'm like, "You guys, if you wanted more cookies, you could simply have said, 'I want more cookies.'" And they're like, "We didn't go anywhere. You just came in and handed us some, And I'm like, "I don't know where the cookies are at." And the dog was outside. So it wasn't the dog. There was nobody else in the house. And to this day, we don't have the plate. I know who took it because they later confessed, but she still got the plate. Yep.
Probably still licking it clean too.
Oh, she liked it. It was a blue color. So she really liked it.
Okay. Yeah, they like blue. I've heard that over and over and over.
I make cookies, and I had this it's not Tupperware, but it's like a sealed container, and I'll put them in. And we'll go to bed and I'll get up and there'll be like 2 in the tub. And I'm like, I know, they'll come in the house in spirit form, but apparently that doesn't stop them from taking cookies. I don't know how they do that. We've had them actually in physical form get in the house because we've come home and found muddy footprints and the pantry door open and things taken out of the pantry and stuff dumped on the floor. And,
giant handprint on the pillow.
Yeah, giant handprints on pillows, and on pants and on the walls and
in the shower stall.
That was so bizarre. I mean, it was funny because it was the only place in the house that day. It was storming out. Only place I could get a signal was I have a triangular shaped 3-person bathtub. Why it's 3 persons, I have no idea, but it's huge. And so I put a chair in that bathtub and I'm sitting there so that I could do this show for a friend of mine because that was the only place I could get a signal because of the storm. And we're literally sitting there, and it was a video. And I happened to look sideways, and there's this gargantuan handprint. I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Like, okay, when did they sneak in the house in the bathroom and put a handprint on them?
I know. Or, when the car's outside, I had a Ford Explorer, and it had an alarm system on it. And they would set that alarm system off all the time. And the first couple of times I took it in to be checked, and they're like, the alarm system's fine. And I'm like, okay. And then things would disappear out of the car. And I would lock it, and the alarm system would go off. And then I'd go out there, and there'd be like, twigs or leaves or mud or whatever, and things out of the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite stories of what happened around your property is where the dog kept escaping all the time. And finally caught the dog, put the dog in the pen, and they decided that they would make sure that the dog couldn't open the hasp on the gate and bent it.
I don't understand.
Like nothing can open the hasp on the gate anymore. They bent it closed.
They did. And, those horseshoe pieces, it goes on the post like that so that you can't get it out. Those things are solid steel. Like, I can't even imagine the amount of strength it took. They pinched it together like it was a bobby pin. Yeah. I mean, you can't. And I thought maybe if we heated it up, we could reopen it. No, not going to happen ever. I mean, it is like that. And it's staying like that for good. But before, when she had gotten out and I was still trying to get her, I looked out because, like, my window, I don't have curtains on it at all in my bedroom. I change in the bathroom where nobody can see me, but I don't. And I don't because when I do put curtains up there, they have a fit and they pound on the house because they can't see in. So I don't have curtains on it. And it drives my husband nuts. He had blinds on his, and the cat finally tore the blinds apart. And he said, I just give up, because I kept opening them up anyway, because one of the ones that we're the closest to was standing out there one night. And I woke up in the middle of the night and he's standing there, and he's over 10 foot and the top of the window is 10 foot off the ground. So he's standing there and he's kind of hunched down looking in the window with this grin on his face. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So I woke Pat up and I said, you entertain him. I'm going back to bed. Like, it happens all the time. And I get excited about it, but it was like, I was so tired. And I said, you get to wake up and entertain him. And so he rolled over right as he looked at him in the window and he walked off. But they get mad when I have the curtains up there. So I take it down, and I happen to be looking out the window, which I do all the time anyway, because where the bed's at, I can look right out into the front yard. And here's this foot. It was a white Bigfoot. It was a big male. It was not the one that was in the backyard, but this one was massive. And this dog that kept getting loose, she was feral, and we were trying to rehab her and find her a home, and nobody could get their hands on her. And he was out there, and he'd bend down and he'd pick her up. He'd carry her all over the front yard. And then he'd put her down and off she'd go. And I finally said to him, that's when they finally caught her. I was like, you can get your hands on her. I can't. You can transfer, you can do whatever you want, but I can't. And the neighbors are going to shoot at her. And she was vicious. She was not safe at all. I mean, she was a mess. And that's when they finally put her in the pen.
And make sure she couldn't get out again ever, apparently.
Sure she get out again. Yeah, nobody will ever use that gate again. Trust me.
And yeah, great picture of that too.
Yeah, well, it's like the garage. We have a 2.5 car garage, and it's got the one big garage door that goes up. And then inside we have the kennels. I have a kennel for my mini pigs, and we have the kennels for the big dogs. And I left, I was gone, and I came home. And when I pulled in the driveway, the bottom part of the garage door was actually pushed in and had been popped off the tracks, which that takes a lot of muscle, like, to go from the outside and push that thing in hard enough to push it right off the tracks.
Yeah.
And had shoved it in. And I thought, I don't know how in the world I'm going to get this garage door up or down, but what in the world, is going on? And they wanted to get in to play with the animals. And they almost destroyed the door. They've done it 2 or 3 times. Fortunately, my son-in-law and my husband were able to get it fixed, but they literally messed that door up big time. But I know they go in there and play with the animals, because they used to go and try to come in through the garage, the big, huge door, and they kept bending it up. So the walkout door, I don't even lock the thing. It goes into the backyard, and that's all fenced in. And they'll come in through there, because I'll go out there and the door will be left open, and there'll be all these big muddy tracks, and all the dogs are loose and they're running amok. It's like nobody's in a pen. Everybody's having fun. Or if I leave dog treats out there, they're gone. There's always something going on out there that shouldn't be going on out there.
Well, Caveman's talked about them apparently playing with his dogs too, where he would put them on their chains and he'd go to bed and he'd get up in the morning and they wouldn't be on their chains. They'd be running around loose, and he'd have to call them to get them near the house again. And he's like, well, who's going out there and taking them off their chain every night,
Yeah.
And where are they going? When I come out in the morning, I have to yell for them and wait a while for them to show up.
Yeah. And I go out in the backyard, and they're always throwing something in the backyard for the Pyrenees. They like the other dogs. They'll play with all the dogs, but they like her because she's white. And they were forever throwing stuff in the backyard, and a lot of that stuff they can, the dogs can't have. So I would go out there in the morning when I'd put them out, and I'd do a complete perimeter walk around the back of in the yard to make sure there wasn't anything in there that they could get hurt on. And I went out there, I checked everything. There wasn't one thing out there except a few dog toys. I went in the house and I looked out there, not even 30 minutes later, and the Pyrenees is walking around with a 2x4 hanging out of her mouth. I'm like, this 2x4 was like 5 foot long, and she's got it in her mouth, and it was weathered, but I mean, she was dragging it all around. And I was like, for the love of God, I would have noticed a 5-foot 2x4 out there.
Yeah.
And we had these stakes that mark off the septic tank, and the septic tank is not in the fenced in yard. And I looked out there one day and she was playing with something, and I thought, what in the world has she got? I go out there, she's got the stakes from the septic tank. And that isn't even in the fenced in yard. It's a good 5-6 feet from it. There's no way she could get to it. They pulled it out and tossed it in there for her to play with. I'll go out there. There'll be shoes that don't belong to us. I've had pot from plants in there, articles of clothing, you name it. They toss all kinds of stuff in there for them to play with. They love the dogs. They do really well with them. I've got 2 outside pens for cats. And they've got shelter and everything in it. And I keep these huge, huge bowls of cat food. So they've got cat food down 24/7, and they can eat as much as they want. And I'll fill it up, and there's no way they can eat it in one night. I'll go out there in the morning and it's completely picked clean. There's not even a crumb, but there'll be pine cones in it instead. And this pen, you can't get a pine cone through the fencing on it. They won't fit. They just simply won't fit. It's got the smaller, metal welded squares on it. We've tried. You can't get a pine cone through there. And they're not anywhere else, but they're in the bowl. And another time they did it, and I went out
So what
there.
do you think? They think cats eat pine cones, or if they fill the bowl up with something else, you won't notice that it's empty? Or
I have no idea. We had Zerky, who's one of the youngsters over here. He used to all the time come up on the porch, and I always keep food out for the feral cats. And we have a pan that's bolted to the banister of the railing, so it can't get knocked off. And he used to come up there, and you'd catch him. I've got these big glass windows on either side of my door, and we'd be sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden you'd see this black head and an arm and a hand reach up on the banister and take the food for the feral cat. And I'm like, could you at least meow? Make me have some idea that that's really what's eating all this food.
Really? They don't even bother with that.
They don't.
They just grab all the grub and eat it.
Yep, pretty much.
And
but we had it was probably about, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago. It might have been a little bit longer, but I don't think it was. But it was in the summer, and we had a tree in the front yard, and I've got these massive pine trees that go up and down my property. I mean, some of them are 30 foot tall. They're big. And this tree came down, and we had a friend of mine's truck here, and it was parked out front. Now, when this tree came down, it should have taken off the entire bed of her truck, literally. And we went out there, and not only was the tree down, it was snapped off about 5-6 feet before her truck, and it was snapped where it doubled back. There's no way that could have happened on its own. No possibility. There wasn't a scratch on her truck, not even so much as a branch by her truck. And it stopped about 6 feet from her truck. And it was not where, like if it would have fallen and broke, that's one thing. But this was snapped off and doubled back the opposite way so that it missed the truck completely.
That's pretty peculiar.
Yeah, that's the second time they've done that here. When they did it here the first time, it was right after we moved in, and there was a hurricane, and we had just moved into the house, and this tree was coming down, and we're like, now we've got all these high winds. We don't have time to get anybody in here. And this tree was probably about, 25 to 35 feet in height. And it would have taken out the whole bonus room above the garage and the garage. And I jokingly said, guys, I could use a little assistance. Hang on a minute. I have a cat. There you go. She was going to knock the screen. I could use a little assistance if you wanted to move the tree. I wouldn't be upset about it, not expecting it to happen. And Pat and I were out in the garage getting the animals ready before the hurricane hit. And we heard this big crash, and it's like all the wind got sucked out of the garage. And we were like, what is going on? Is the hurricane here early? Went outside and everything was fine and calm. And I thought, God, what was that? I know it happened. And I'm like, oh my God, the tree's down. Not only did they take the top of it and snap it back away from the house, when it went down, it was pulled 10 feet behind the stump. So no way that it would hit it. It was unbelievable. And when Igor got here, because he had come right after the hurricane, And he saw it. He was just dumbfounded. He could not believe it. He's like, I can't even believe this happened. I said, look at this. Like, it's literally 10 feet behind the stump, you know? And then where it was broke at, there was nothing there to make it break, but the top had been snapped back exactly like this one had. But her truck had a scratch on it.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Handy to have them when they're friendly and helpful like that. So what have you been hearing from other people as far as the apparent increase in activity going on?
I'm not getting a lot of bad reports that they're being aggressive or anything like that. It just seems to be more they're showing themselves more and more. But, you know, they have said for, I want to say, as long as I can remember, and that going back maybe 6 to 8 years, they were always telling me about the big battle, the big battle, the big battle. And I'm like, okay, when is this big battle? Well, they don't know time. I mean, you know, our people created time. Theirs works a little bit differently. They know some form of time, but not like ours. And it really started, I think, this big battle that they're referring to probably about 3 years ago. And they've been really consistent with, you know, everything's going to come to this plane in this dimension, and the battle will be fought here. And your people will be fighting as well. And, you know, it has a lot to do with it. And time you have that negative energy, it just brings on more negative energy. And right now, our world is at an all-time low. You know, I mean, we've got more negative energy than anything right now. And everybody is seeing more cryptids, they're seeing more UFOs, they're seeing more ETs. I mean, it all filters into the same thing. And so and they've said that the big battle is being fought now. And I think that's probably why people are seeing more activity. I mean, they're really, and this is the other thing, I'm getting contacted more and more every day with people that have the sense of they're supposed to be doing something with the Sasquatch, and they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, but they feel like there's this calling, but they don't know what it's for. Well, it actually is. It has to do with this battle. I mean, like, they're getting people together that they feel that they can trust, and they're people that have pure hearts and good energy, and they are showing themselves more and more. And it seems to be building, which is it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But more and more people are seeing them. I mean, they're actually not just having glimpses of them running or taking off, but like full-fledged sightings in flesh and blood. And then you have the people that have gone past that flesh and blood stage that are having more and more encounters in a paranormal sense. You know, I had somebody get hold of me the other day, and they're like, you know, I really feel like all of a sudden my mind is more open to all of this paranormal things, you know, and this person just had questions, which that's fine. And I always tell everybody, I don't know it all. I'm not an expert. Don't claim to be. If I have the answer, I'm happy to share it. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you, I don't know it, you know, and I'll try to put you in touch with somebody that does, or I will ask some of the cryptids and see if I can get the answer for you. But they are coming out more and more. And I think that it's only going to continue. You know, how people react to it and how they behave with it will depend on how the outcome of it goes. You know, I think when people see them, the first thing is to be afraid. And I'm not blaming anybody. They do look scary.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been out with them in the middle of the night in the woods at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you know, I can hear them and I can feel their energy as they're coming up behind me. And that's the only thing I hate. I don't like it when it's dark and I've got something coming up behind me that I can't see. If I can see it, I'm not as bad. But they can look frightening. But we also look frightening to them. You know, it's a two-way street there. And it's a matter of, rather than panic at the sight of them, learning their mannerisms and seeing what they're doing and how they're reacting. And I always tell people, you know, your body is going to be able to, whether you know that you're reading energy, your body's going to know. Like if you're going to feel fearful, it's because maybe you're picking up energy that's making you feel that way, you know, other than just looking at them. So I always tell people, you know, you don't have to sit there and stare them in the eye. If looking at them is scary to you, look down, you know, and very calmly give them that space and move away.
Well, I know the ones in my group, the only time that they freak me out, because I try to be super respectful with them, and they're in return super respectful with me. But the only time they freak me out is when I find them on video right, after I film them. And there's like one with the head the size of a beach ball standing behind me,
Yep.
really close. That kind of stuff freaks me out.
Yeah, because you didn't know they were there. Pat and I
Well,
were
yeah.
tonight, he gets up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning for work. So he was getting ready to go to bed, and I was sitting on the bed while he was getting ready to go to sleep. And he's like, "Have you looked out in the yard?" He's like, "There's all kinds of stuff going on in the woods across the street." He's like, "You see heads popping out here and an arm popping out there." I'm like, "This goes on all night. Like, you're asleep, and I'm the one with insomnia." And he sleeps really, when he's tired, he's out like a light. Like, bombs don't wake him up. But he gets up at 4 a.m. So he has to go to sleep earlier, and I'm still awake. And I literally can watch out there all night long. My son-in-law goes out on the porch and sees it.
Yeah.
My daughter went to work one time, and it was early in the morning, and she saw a youngster crossing the road. We get them all up and down here.
And that's not the only weird activity you got going on there. Speaking of son-in-law, you want to talk about that MUFON report?
Yeah, always had, everywhere I've lived, I've had an excessive amount of UFOs. I've had them come down in the yard, and then I've had missing time after my first abduction. I was 4, so it's been a constant throughout my life. And my daughter and her fiance are staying with us for right now. And they are getting the crash course in it as well. And he's seen a lot since he's been here. He's seen the ETs, UFOs, that type of thing. And he actually happened to be out on the porch, and he saw a UFO and started filming it. And the film that he did and the pictures are just phenomenal. Like, they are really, really good. And so he hollered to myself and to Pat, and we went out there and we watched it for about 20 minutes. He had already got the film done by then. And it was a saucer shaped with multicolored lights all around it. But then there was a second one. And that one, to me, in my opinion, it looked almost like a sphere shaped because it was all solid red dots, and it wasn't too far behind that one. And so he took the video, which turned out pretty good, and then he took stills of it, and they're just fantastic. And so he sent it into MUFON. And said, "Look at this stuff, these, you can't deny that the pics are good and the video's good." So he sent it to MUFON, and they came back and said that it was a class 1 sighting, and that they had done their investigation. And by that, I took that to mean they had checked the skies, the airport and everything, to find out what was up in the air that night. There were no planes or anything that I saw at that time when we were out there. But anyway, they came back and said it was a class 1 sighting, and just really complimented him on the job that he did as far as the photos and the footage. And that as far as they were concerned, it was not terrestrial, meaning it was not one of our guys.
Right. Nothing that they could go, this is Czechoslovakian. No.
Yeah, no. And it's really some of the best I've seen, and we have them. It's almost a nightly thing it always has been really frequent anywhere I've lived. It seems to have amped up considerably. Pat was sitting in the living room. And again, I don't have curtains on the front of my house because they like to look in the windows. And he was sitting there and he looked through the window and here's this white saucer, like a disc shaped thing that right across from our house is a tree farm. And it's all pine trees. And it went just the level of the pine trees and kept going 90 miles an hour, just right on down the road. And so he came in and told me, he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Well, I was watching TV and light flooded in the window, but I didn't actually see what made the light." And he said, "No, it was a UFO. It just went by super fast and was headed down going towards the creek." And I'm like, okay. So then like 2 or 3 nights later, I'm laying in bed and it did it twice. It went down and then it came back and it goes just as fast as it can right past. It's like this bright white light, but it's saucer shaped.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just above the tree lines. But ever since my son-in-law got that video, we've got helicopters every night. They hit about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and they'll go all night long. And they don't stop. I mean, we get them every single night now. Yeah. So it was pretty good. And you're going to see in some of the photos and in the video, it looks like the peak of a house. It's because I have a pump house out in my yard. And it was not the UFO was not in my yard. It was past that. But when the footage was taken, you can see just like the peak from the pump house out there. So if you wonder what that is, that's what it is.
Okay.
But
cool.
It was out there. It stayed in that same spot out there for quite a while before it left. And I believe the other night, Ryan had went outside and there was another one out there in the same spot. So I don't know if it was the same one or not, but it was definitely out there. But we've had several people see the UFOs here as well. I mean, he has seen them multiple times here. I have seen them multiple times. Pat has. And we had a friend from Michigan come and visit us for a couple months. And he forgot his phone charger out in his car. And he got up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, to walk out to the car to get the phone charger. And he turned around to come back in and there was a UFO directly over the garage.
Huh.
And then I know I've sent it to you. I can send it again, but I've got that photo where there's a triangular shaped craft above my garage and below it is an open portal and there's a head coming out of the portal.
Yeah, we've shown that one before. They can go back and look at that old episode,
Yeah.
but they haven't seen the new one for the MUFON.
Yeah, I'll get that to you tonight. Yeah, there's been a lot of activities, and like I said, the Bigfoots have been all over. They get quiet for a couple days, and I'm like, okay, wonder what they're doing, and then it amps back up again.
Yeah, they're just like kids. When they're quiet for a while, they're up to something.
Yeah, and the kids like to get they go up this one pine tree at the end of my house, and then they jump on the roof, which is right where they go in it is right above my bedroom.
Oh,
And you
great.
hear them up there. It sounds like elephants. And there's been more than one occasion that the crazy person outside going, "If you don't get your hairy little off my roof, I'm going to zap it." Yeah, that would be me.
Get off my roof, you little jerks. I'm trying to sleep.
I know. Well, it's like they're going to do damage up there. They got up on the peak of above the garage. I have a very large bonus room. And they got up there and they actually knocked one of the shingles off. But the peak is so steep, getting back up there to put that shingle on, unless I, can either astral project my big butt up there or have some kind of jetpack to get up there, it's going to be really peak on it. So, you took it off, you could put it back on.
Yeah, quit tearing up parts of the house where it's really hard to get to and fix.
It is. It's like I had this one window. And the cats, I was laying in bed. My bedroom is on the main floor. The master suite is. All the other bedrooms are upstairs. And I was laying on the bed watching TV and I had my bedroom door open. and the cats were on the windowsill in the sitting area right outside my room. Cat was in the living room, and all you saw was this big hairy arm come up from under the windowsill, smack it like that. And these cats that were on the windowsill scared the crap out of. I'm laying on the bed or sitting up on the bed watching TV, and all I see are airborne cats flying through the air in front of my bedroom door. I was like, what in God's name is going on? And then like 2 nights later, I was in the living room and I watched it again. And it was the same, we have 2 or 3 white ones. One of them I'm really close to, but then we have the big white male that's white. And then the one that was in the backyard tonight. And this one is a white arm one that kept going up and hitting it, scaring the daylights out of the cats. But
is that the same one that was like over 10 feet tall, peeking in the window with a big grin?
no, that one is very near and dear to my heart. That guy's followed me from Michigan to here, and he'll go back to Michigan with me.
Well,
Yeah, he saved my life many times. So he's my babe. He knows it too.
One of your fans.
Oh, but he's the one that went into the house that time and got hold of the pack of the Nutty Buddies. Or no, it wasn't Nutty Buddy, Muddy Buddies by Chex cereal. They're got fudge in them, and then they're covered in chocolate and then powder. And the kids had went to school years ago when they were young. And I took them to school, and I had just cleaned the entire house. I had the pack of this Muddy Buddies sitting on the counter, and I thought, you know what? It's been a long week. I'm taking them to school. I'm going to come home. I'm putting my pajamas back on. I'm going to get my Muddy Buddies. I'm going to watch a movie, and I'm going to just relax and enjoy myself. I come home, and there's muddy footprints going up the porch.
There's your Muddy Buddy right there.
All through the kitchen. And I'm like, okay, so I clean this all up. I go to get the Muddy Buddies. They're not there. And I'm like, and he's yelling at me right now and laughing because I've been talking about this for years. And I'm like, where did they go? So I'm tearing the cupboards apart. And I'm like, I know I put them on the counter before I left this morning. Like, all I wanted to do was relax and eat my Muddy. Couldn't find it. Went to go put food out for him that night, and there was the empty bag out in the woods.
I got a question for you. You remember when they took the whole bucket full of crescent wrenches and other assorted tools and disappeared with it, and then brought them back about 6 months later when they were all nice and rusty? Did you ever, over a year, did you ever find out why the hell they took those in the first place?
No, they were taking all kinds of stuff out of the garage. And my daughter-in-law had also brought over all these bags of baby clothes. And I said, they're in garbage bags. The mice are going to get in those. And she said, oh, I'll come over, in a couple of weeks and I'll bring some totes and I'll pack it all in that. I just don't have any place for it. I'm like, okay. And they went in there and grabbed those garbage bags. We found the garbage bags with the clothes out in the woods, but all the clothes were gone except a couple of items. And then they also took a football. And they took the football and they squeezed it like this, like you would a pop can.
Yeah.
And just completely collapsed the whole football. And then they took a basketball and they bit that like you would an apple. And they took all those balls. And my ex-husband was so nasty about that. He was like, you let the kids go out there and get into it. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Like, the kids didn't bother it. The kids didn't touch it. They didn't do anything. What are you talking about? Well, all my tools are gone. And I said, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, nobody's been in there. But I used to leave the garage door open because we would get these huge rainstorms out of nowhere. And they didn't live on my property. They came to my property every day. And I had a suspicion of where they were living at. And it was very, very difficult to get to. And so if they were up by the house, a lot of the times they had the youngsters with them or whatever, we would get these flash storms. And then I also had feral cats there. So I would leave the garage door up. So if they needed to get into the garage for shelter, they could. If the feral cats needed to get in there, they could. And then they just took that as it was a free for all. Whatever was in there, it was like your one-stop shopping store. They took anything and everything they wanted out of there. But when the kids were little, they had taken a bucket and they put all these little McDonald's toys and different toys and stuff in it. And we took blankets out and they put it out in the woods for the little kids. And they had this bucket with toys. And they left the big blanket, but they took the bucket with the toys. And then almost 2 years later, we were having a bonfire. And we went out there one day, and one of the McDonald's toys, they had taken it and they had pulled up these concrete blocks off that were cemented to the slab that I couldn't get off there. They pulled them off without a problem. I mean, we were out there doing everything, trying to jackhammers, trying to get them apart. We couldn't. They pulled them right off of that cement slab, broke the seal up from the cement and everything. And they put them all in a circle, and they put the McDonald's toys in the middle of the circle. I mean, they, I don't know why they do half the things they do, but they have fun doing it.
Yeah, they have peculiar ideas about how to do things and whatnot. So getting back to the huge battle that's apparently been going on for a while now, I'm hearing from another one of our mutual friends that there was a whole sort of a Gugwe invasion in their area, and the local Sasquatch and Dogman teamed up to get rid of them. I'm wondering how much of that kind of stuff is going on in other parts of the country.
It is, for whatever reason, that particular area seems to be a hotbed with the Gugwe. Now, I have had other reports that a few people have seen them. I have been very fortunate. I don't have them here.
Yay.
Yes, for right now, knock on wood. I haven't had that problem. I've got one photo that I took that's a puckwudgie that was in the back of my yard. And they ran that thing off in a heartbeat. So he didn't stand much of a chance. And then, like I said, I've got a picture of a lizard man that was back there. But we haven't had a big Gugwe problem. Now, there's a couple times that I've wondered, because the Foots have said, stay in the house. It's dangerous outside. We don't want you out right now. It's not safe. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe that's what's going on. But they've never said that it was.
That is what's happening with these other people, because there's been 2 or 3 times now where the local Sasquatch have pretty much said, go inside now. And, and they know what those words mean. They actually talk to them, not mind speak. And there was a big racket out in the woods, and something was titanically fighting something else out there.
Right. Well, and she's called me when it's gone on a couple times too, and asked for my help. So, I know it's happening. I'm not having it here as of yet. And I say yet because you never know. Now, other people that have contacted me have said that they've had them show up in their areas, but not as prominent as what's going on there.
Just makes me wonder if there's some kind of a big fight going on. It'd be nice to have the scorecard to know who's on what side. And
I would like to know the background on the land there, because, what I've been told is there's a battle over there for the land. So I don't know, is this maybe a Native American land, or I don't know, but I would really, and I keep forgetting to ask her when we talk.
Well, actually what I was talking about was on the large scale with this big battle that they've been talking about going on.
If we were getting used for it, they would be, of course, on the bad side, but
well, that's the whole question. It's like, who's on the good guy side, who's on the bad guy side? We need a scorecard,
Yeah, and when you ask the Bigfoot, it's like anything that has pure energy and light is on the good team. And they said good energy and light can be in anything.
Right.
So that still goes back to there's good and bad and everything out there.
So they're on like both sides. Some of them are good and on the good guy side, and some of them suck and on the bad guy side.
And to be, from what I've seen from them, and even when I've tried to talk to them, I think, most of them are just not one you want as a neighbor. I don't necessarily know. I mean, they seem to be, to me, any read that I get on them, I really think, and I shouldn't really say this, a lot of your cryptids are created by the ETs. I think personally, and this is only an opinion, I have no proof of it, I personally think the Gugwe is more military based than that's where they came from, because they don't really feel like they even have a soul.
No, but here's the problem, though. Those things have been cited since way before the white man was even on the continent. And most of the native tribes have a name for them in the areas that they live in, which is different than the name for the local Bigfoot. And apparently the Bigfoot have never gotten along with these things. And it sounds like the dogmen don't get along with them either. And there's an old legend about the... right about the time the first fur trappers started showing up out here in the Rocky Mountains, there was apparently a big war going on between the Sasquatch and the Gugwe. And the Sasquatch won and pretty much slaughtered all of them here in the Rocky Mountains.
But then I also have to look at that and say, where I believe that to be true, 110%. We've had our military and our government have taken what's already here and then altered them, just like they did with the dogmen.
Yeah.
They were not the original creators of the dogmen. The Evans created them, and there's another race that did as well. And they've gone, in every history book you pick up, there's been tales of dogmen.
Yeah.
And dogmen are not necessarily bad. They're not these trained killers that everybody thinks they are. However, when the military got hold of them and did their little, witchy poo things and creations and played God, those ones can be deadly. And I tend to think that has a lot to do with some of the Gugwe that we see now. I think they've always been bad to begin with, but if you take that and put it in a petri dish and mix it up, you can make what's already bad worse. And I know for a fact that they've tried to take the Bigfoot and crossbreed them to other things and
like Dracos.
Exactly. And I know for a fact that they've done it, and tried to do it. And so that's why I say, I don't think necessarily the Gugwe were only created like from the start from the government, but I tend to wonder if there isn't some manipulation from them involved as well.
That's what I keep hearing. And the person we're talking about down south there, that's literally what the Sasquatch told them. That there's only a few of the real ones involved. The rest of them are all GMO things.
Yep. Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because it's like, the stuff that the ETs create and drop off, and we've had words before where different people that have had contact with the ETs have said, they're going to be dropping all kinds of stuff. We haven't seen anything yet. And I've told you this before, I've got some unknown cryptid that's around here, never bothered anything. It's never been aggressive or anything like that. It just lives its life, but I have no idea what this thing is. I don't know of anybody that knows what this thing is, but the military and the government and the shadow government or whatever you want to call them, they're really good at creating things, and then they just drop them off. Now, why do they do this? I don't know. I have suspicions that are only my thoughts, but no way to prove any of it.
Field tests.
Yeah, well, field tests and population control.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
And it gives Dave Pilates something to write about in his missing 411 books.
Well, like I said, that's just my opinion. I don't have any facts to back up that statement as far as what I think they do it for, but that's my own opinion for what it's worth. But they do create an awful lot of stuff. They're really good at trying to play God or Mr. Scientist or whatever, in their nice little lab. I had a friend of mine that was actually crossed with DNA from a dragon, and it's just, I don't know. It's really frightening to think that there's anybody out there that has enough power to be able to do these things, but unfortunately it happens. And I think with some of these cryptids, they may not have been the best. They might have been, somewhat aggressive or not really, kind-hearted. But then when you take it and you have somebody that can manipulate the genetics in it to make them highly aggressive, you have a big problem.
Yeah. Well, and as far as other examples of that go, look at Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky. It's very likely when they accidentally roadkilled him and took him on board to fix him again, that they were doing some DNA alteration on him too in order to fix him.
100%. I believe that, and I've met Travis. He's a wonderful person.
I have too. Yep, sweet guy.
Yeah, he's very nice. But do I think that happened? I do. I absolutely do. And I think there's a lot more genetic manipulation from the ETs than people have any clue. They've been doing it for a long time. I don't think it's going to stop. It's only going to get worse, according to them. Their words, not mine. And, we'll wait and see. But they have no intention of slowing down creating all these things. And there is. There is literally so much out there that we have no clue about. None.
Yeah. And you got to wonder how many people have actually read ahead on the script. Like, for instance, they always talk about how a lot of the stuff on The Simpsons is predictive programming. They'll show something on there, and then a few years later, it'll actually happen in real life, right? And that's happened a bunch of times. Well, one peculiar thing on there was where they had one of their Halloween horror episodes. And in one part of it, it shows the aliens are invading Springfield, and they're the little green guys with ray guns, and they're chasing the humans down the road, zapping them and disintegrating them and stuff. And then later on in the show, the little green aliens are running down the same road, the opposite direction, being chased by Sasquatch that are throwing boulders and trees at them. What's that all about?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, a lot of this stuff, and like if you watch the movies, you know, granted, the writers have amazing minds because that's why they're writers and they're making, you know, all this money writing all these films and stuff. But a lot of the stuff and the creatures in there are not just something they created when they got bored.
Right.
You know,
Well,
there's so
Chewbacca the Wookiee, I mean, you know, duh, I wonder what that is. It's a space Sasquatch, for God's sakes. It's obvious what it is. There's a guy down south that even, like, shortly after the original Star Wars came out with Chewbacca in, immediately started calling the local Bigfoot reports Wookiee reports. You know?
Yeah. And my understanding is he had an encounter when he was like 9 years old.
Yeah.
And that's where Chewbacca came from. You know, it wasn't exactly a big leap. But that's what I'm saying, you know, people, you know, think all these characters are fictional. But what they don't realize is most of them really are not fiction. And when you get up, like way up in the mountains in these very isolated areas, the stuff that you find out there.
Oh, you mean like where I live?
But the stuff you find out there, really, it makes your blood run cold because it's stuff that you never dreamed was possible. That's why when they talk about all these people that are missing in the national parks, and they're like, oh, the Bigfoots probably did it. Have the Bigfoots done it? Oh, hands down. They're involved with some of them because not everything is nice. Just like if you took 1,000 of our people, put them out in the woods, how many of them are going to do something to a tourist? Because our people, you have murderers, you have rapists, you have psychopaths, you have pedophiles. I mean, the list goes on, and they're not any different. So it's not just because they're a Bigfoot, you know, but at the same time, the way I look at it is a Bigfoot is the least of your problems out there because the other stuff that is out there are a whole lot more dangerous than them.
Yep. You better make sure you got Sasquatch has your back when you're out there because you don't want some of that other stuff sneaking up on you. I mean, I get kind of unnerved when I admit it, when there's a 12-foot Sasquatch following me around, I get kind of unnerved about it.
I think we all do. You know, as many times as I've been out in the woods and they're walking around and stuff, like during the day, I do pretty good. I get so curious that it's, you know, it's not too bad. Have I ever gotten frightened? Of course. You know, I'm not an idiot. You're talking about things that can kill you and snap you like a flipping twig. I was in Texas and a friend of mine had, you know, and we've talked about this before, him and his grandkids were going to show me to this area he wanted as a research site. We get out of the truck and these kids go running up this tree where there's a tree stand at. And it was a 100-acre plot of land that backed into a nature preserve.
Oh,
and he had been going out there thinking, you know, the people that own this 100 acres had told him he could use it as a research site. He takes us back to this area because he wanted to show me where all the berry bushes were. And I'm like, okay, we go back there. And it was a feeding ground. There's like dead animal bones all over the place.
Oh, God.
The kids jump out of the car. They go running up the tree stand, and they're in the tree stand. And literally you can see the bushes and the trees moving, and they're coming in from like all sides. And I'm mind speaking with this thing. And the one that was in charge is like, leave the children. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And he was very adamant I was going to leave the kids. And the kids were up in this tree stand. My friend doesn't know what's going on. And I'm like, go get the truck. And he's like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I said, go get the truck. I told you this was not a good idea. Go get the truck. So he started to walk towards the truck. And then he heard noises coming from the other side of the truck. So he stopped. Well, this thing wanted the kids. He was hell-bent. He was going to take the kids. So, and he was at the end of this little alcove we were in. So I walked past where the kids were at with the tree, and I'm walking towards him, which did not make him happy, by the way. And he's yelling at me and going, you will go and leave the children or you will die. And I kept saying, I'm not leaving the children. And he says, you have no right to be here. I said, I have the right to be here. Earthkeeper granted me permission to be here, and I'm not leaving without the kids. And so this was kind of like this standoff. And I got just past where the kids were at in the tree stand, and there was this big palmetto bush, and it was standing next to me. Now, if it wasn't for these kids, I would have been scared to death, but my only thought was the kids,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so this palmetto bush came up just past my hip, and he bluff charged me. And he was cloaked, but you could feel, like, the kids could hear him coming because you could feel the ground shake. It was that loud. And he let out a scream, and the kids had started to come down the tree stand when they heard the ground from where he was running. He leveled the palmetto bush. Like, he got that close to me. It blew my hair way back off my shoulder, leveled the palmetto bush down to the ground. And that bush was like, my leg was up against it when he did it. He almost knocked me over. And the kids, when it happened, they went right back up the tree stand. And I'm like trying to tell the kids, oh, it's fine. He's just playing. Everything's great. Why don't you guys come down and we'll go get ice cream? It's going to be fun. So I'm like wanting to, like, panic, but then wanting to try to keep it calm because of these kids, because they were little. So the kids came down the tree stand. They're like, are you sure it's okay? And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great. He likes you guys. It's awesome. Come on down. And my friend Dale that I was with is like, his eyes are ready to like bug out of his head. He's as white as he can be. And he's like, oh my God, what's going on? And I'm like, the kids come down. I'm like, take the kids, slowly go get in the truck and lock their doors. And he's like, well, come on. And I'm like, I'm not moving until the kids are in the truck. So the kids ran to the truck and he got them in the truck. I said, open my door. Just open my door, but I want everybody else's door locked. He's like, all right. So of course, you don't turn your back on them when they get agitated like that. So I'm like backing up and he's yelling at me to still leave the kids. And I backed up and I got in the truck and I slammed the door. I said, get me the hell out of here. So he took off and he ran up behind the truck and just slapped the holy crap out of the back end of the truck as hard as he could as we were driving off. And they never went back over there, thank God.
Yeah, especially don't bring the kids over there. What the hell?
I know. And he's like, well, I've been taking the grandkids here all the time. I said, you're lucky they're still there. And then he went back with his girlfriend, not to that part of the acreage, but to another part of it, and called me. And he's like, I think I'm in trouble over here. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, well, we're having a bonfire. And he said, I didn't park the truck right next to this fire pit. And he said, there is eyes everywhere. And I have this intense feeling that there's a problem. So I'm like trying to talk to him. And there was one that wanted to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you need to get into the truck, move slow, pay attention to what's going on, and get in the truck. So he got in the truck and the thing ended up climbing into the bed of it and was pounding on the truck. I mean, they eventually got out of there and then he stopped going altogether.
It's funny how visual recognition, I was actually joking with Papa Craig, who's been on the show a couple times about this, and he's got some of these shows up, like some of the ones I turn out, and he's got it on the big screen TV, and he's looking at it, and he's trying to see, is there anything in there, and this guy's been out in the woods hunting for forever, right? So he should be able to do it. And one of his little grandkids, who's like barely up to the top of the screen, comes walking up and puts his hand on the screen and goes, Grandpa, monster. Right on its face, right? So the last show that I just turned out a few days ago, I asked him, I said, oh, how'd you like the show? And he goes, it got the response, Grandpa, monster in the trees.
Oh my God. Well, it's like,
so like the kids can spot him, but he can't see him. They can see it on the screen. There's one right there, Grandpa. And he's like, what are you looking at?
When Sunny was here, we put her episode up on the TV, and I've got a 65-inch screen TV.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh my God, you can see them all in there. And I never knew they were there because, it was a bigger screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I try and encourage people with big screens to do that. When I turn out a breakdown video or something, go watch it on a big screen. There's probably more in the background that we missed.
Well, yeah, if there's one, there's more. They don't do
always.
I mean,
and they
even
like to pile up into a big heap just to break up their silhouette. You'll see this big odd shaped blob with like eyes here, eyes here, eyes here, eyes here. They're just laying in a pile, basically looking at you.
There was one the other night. I have an ensuite bathroom, and in my bathroom is, you have the tub and you have the shower, but then it has a toilet room. And in this toilet room is a window. And I got up to use the restroom, and I had the window open because it was kind of warm. And I know darn well one was out there. And I was like looking around, and I can hear it walking around, and I can hear it shuffling around. I think he was either up against the house or he had gone around the corner of the house, because the window there is like 8.5 feet off the ground, and it's frosted glass, and it's right in the area where that corner tub is. And we have found handprints on there, face prints up against the glass, and they can't see in it. They try, but they can't see in it. And it's like, I'll go in and I'll take a bath, and I hear tapping on that window. And I'm like, is it too much for 5 minutes of privacy? It's like when I had my kids and they were toddlers. You couldn't go to the bathroom alone. You couldn't take a bath by yourself. And I'm like in the tub, and I'm hearing all this tapping, and they're knocking on the wall. Like 5 minutes of privacy. That's all I'm asking for.
I know there's a bunch of Bigfoot in that video that Sunny shot when she was over here in Idaho to the west of me. But my favorite part of it is where she finds the surveyor stake in the ground, bent at a 90-degree angle with an 18-inch track right next to it, clearly letting you know who bent the surveyor stake at a 90-degree angle.
And who was doing the surveillance?
Yeah, like, I don't like your surveyor stake here. Bent it at a 90-degree angle.
Well, they I put on my mouth. They go over at my neighbor's, and they go right by her shed, and they sit there and they peek from around her shed and watch the house. Or they watch the dogs from there. And right now they're all worked up because when I moved in here, this was nothing but solid woods up and down here. There wasn't there was the 3 houses, one on one side of me, one on the other, and mine. But it was everybody had at least an acre or more. And there was so much woods here that it outlined their property. So you had complete isolation, nobody's watching you. And the person on the one side of me has a semi, and he wants to expand his business. So he just went and leveled 3/4 of his property of woods. And then on the other side of me, my other neighbor, who I absolutely adore, and I had talked to her about the Bigfoots, and now she's used to them coming up in her yard, so she's fine with them. But she had nothing but woods up past her, and one of the lots got sold and a house got put in there, and they just got done leveling all the woods there. Like, there's nothing there, and the Foots are just having a fit. And I'm like, I can't stop. I don't know what you want me to do. And then when you go down the road, down by where the creek is at and the swamp is, they leveled 8 acres. And they're all upset. And I'm like, the only thing.
Well, they should be upset. Why the hell are the stupid humans cutting their forest down?
Exactly. And I'm like, go ahead, just go behind my place, because you're safe back there. It's all private property. Nobody can touch it, and nobody's going to get to you through my property. So they go back there and they hide out. And then right across from me there's over 200 acres, and it's all a pine tree farm. And they're forever in there. You are always seeing eyes shine in there. There's a portal that opens and closes over there. There's, my next door neighbor saw 2 dogmen walk out of there.
Well, they like pine trees because pine trees are reliable cover year round. They never lose their leaves.
Yeah, and the Bigfoots are in there all the time, so we see them over there quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But they come from there, and then they cross into the yard, and they're all over the place.
All righty. Well, I think we got a good show in here. We're kind of running out of time. We're actually over an hour. So we're going to end it here. But thanks for being on the show again. Really appreciate it. And was there any last thing you wanted to say or anything?
No, I'm good. I'm good. It was fun. We always have fun.
Yes, indeedy. And me and Robin and several other people are going to be over at a Bigfoot conference in Nebraska at the end of next month. If you want to mention that.
April 22nd is the conference. It's Friday and Saturday. Duke will be speaking on Saturday, as I will be. So we'd love you to come. It ought to be a lot of fun. I did that conference last year. It was fantastic. It was so much fun, and great vendors.
And some other cool locals that are liable to be there too, like Rich Soul from Knox Gigas Project and Barry Webster from Res Squatching, that are both right in the area.
I haven't talked to them yet, but they might be. I don't know. Yep. I haven't talked to either.
I'm not saying they're necessarily speaking, but they're so close by, you can almost guarantee they're going to be there.
Yeah, Ron Moorhead will be speaking.
There you go. We find
So
out about the Sierra Sounds and the quantum Bigfoot from Ron.
yeah, Kenny Collins will be speaking. I can't remember the rest of the lineup, but we've got some good guests coming. So it should be really good. We had a really, really good turnout last year. We're hoping for the same this year. It's going to be kind of concerning between COVID and the gas prices, but we're hopeful. We had a lot of people come, and the night on Friday night after the
what? That's all over with.
yeah, Friday night after the conference, we will be having, and we did this last year as well. There'll be 2 movies that are released. Last year we did the Alien Bigfoot Connection, and there is another one that will be released this year, and I think it's the Alien and Bigfoots in the Rockies or something of that nature. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it's going to be really good, and the producers will be there, and they'll also be around during the conference to answer any questions and have copies of the videos for sale. So it's at the IMAX Theater, and we always have we had a really good time doing that last year. It was fantastic.
What's the name of the conference? Where is it at?
It is the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference. It's in Hastings, Nebraska. And it's on Facebook, so you can find it there, or they're putting the website up soon. You'll even see Duke's picture there.
Oh, God.
And yep, and you can pre-buy tickets, or you're welcome to buy tickets at the door as well. And if anybody has any problems trying to find the information on it, I'm on Facebook under Robin Haynes McCray, and you can get hold of me there, and I'll get you where you need to go.
There you go. So it's going to be a Bigfooty good time.
Yeah.
Make sure to show up if you're nearby. Drop in, say hi to us, listen to our lectures, buy some swag, and hang out with us.
In Georgia, the 16th of April.
Right on. So if you're down in Georgia.
Conference, so.
Yeah. And I just got lots of different Bigfoot guests showing up to go do research expeditions with me this summer. Some of which, I'm not going to reveal who they are yet, but yeah, some of them have their own talk shows and stuff too.
I don't know how I would. I've got the other thing is there is and I'm not sure what the title of it's going to be, but there's a camp out in again, you can get hold of me and I'll help you with it. Lost Cryptid Society, I think, is the one that's going to put it on.
Michigan.
But yeah, in Michigan, June 3rd through the 5th, there's going to be a camp out. We'll get you out in the woods and do a few things there. So it should be fun.
And also the going on right now as we record this, there's a meet and greet at the LBL, everybody's favorite place to go to run into unhappy and dangerous cryptids for some dumb reason.
Yeah, I can't understand that. I mean, I know people that have gone there and said, you know what, I didn't have any problems. And I'm like, and you're lucky.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
To begin with, if you want to have, and I stress this to people, if you want to have contact, you want positive contact, not negative. Yeah. And these ones that are over at LBL, they're there because they're trying to get away from people. They don't want to deal with us. That's why they're highly aggressive. They're aggressive, just because they're not nice and they have bad energy and they're awful. But yet, let's go there and poke the bear. Like, why?
Yeah, no. And we know that there's rogue Bigfoot there that have mostly been thrown out of their own clans and they've ganged up. They got a little gangbanger league there. B, there's very unfriendly dogmen around there. Absolutely. And C, there are absolutely gugwe there.
Oh, totally. And the thing that really angers me is we go there and provoke it because now we're going into an area that we already know we're not wanted in.
Yeah.
So we're going to start out being disrespectful. We're going to go in there. And then when they do something horrible, because they are horrible, that's why they're there and they've banded together. It gives all of the cryptids bad names. And then everybody's out chasing through the woods with guns and they're going to shoot them. And we're the ones that started it.
It's like you're a different species and the only humans you want to have contact with are ones that are like on death row in a penitentiary. Yeah. And you're going to go in there and poke them with a stick and see what happens. And then when it happens, you're going to be like, oh, humans are horrible.
Yep. I can't understand that. And it's like, you don't want the bad contact. You want positive if you want it ongoing. And then you don't go to areas that they don't want you in. Like you're sitting in your home. Would you want an axe murderer and like Marilyn Manson or something to come into your home? No. With your children? Of course you wouldn't. So, okay, so then you're at home with your kids and they come anyway. You're going to fight back because you didn't want them there to begin with. talk about the guest that came for dinner and never left. I mean,
Yeah. Well, at some point you got to have some common sense. If you're walking through an area with a GoPro on the back of your head and you keep getting pictures of Dogman following you, maybe you should take a hint.
Yeah. And it's like, don't tell me that you're doing this for research. You're not doing it for research. You're doing it to see if you can push the bear enough to have him fight back. Okay, well, you're going to get him fighting back, and somebody could get killed.
Yeah. Or in like the case I was just referencing, he's going to follow you home and make it quite clear that he's not happy that you're going through his territory all
And
the time.
that really and truly does happen. I get calls from people all the time, and they're like, well, I went into this one area and they did this and this and this, and then I went home, and now all of a sudden I've got problems here. And I'm like, well, you went into their home where they didn't want you. And then I always find out, I want to say 7 out of 10 times, that while they were on their way to this area where they acted out at, there were warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
They clearly gave warning signs that this person ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's always our people's fault, but in a lot of cases it is. They ignored the warning signs. They went into this area. These things fight back, don't want them there, run them out of there, and then they follow them home and harass them. Well, you went to their home first and harassed them.
Yeah. You walked into their living room and took a dump on their shag carpeting. What did you think they were going to do?
Exactly. I'm telling you, there was a lady in Texas, and they actually did that to her house. She would go outside with a shotgun regularly, threatening, because she didn't, they scared her just because they existed. And she threatened them, and she's going to kill them, and they're going to kill their children and all this other stuff. And she'd be shooting at them like Annie Oakley. She went to go visit some relatives. And while she was gone, they went into the house, and they literally made nests in there, and they crapped everywhere. Just the whole house was a mess. She came home and she wanted them all dead. And I'm like, you were there shooting at them first. You're lucky all they did was crap on your living room floor.
Yeah, they could have demolished the whole house pretty easily.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to cut her short here at 1:20 now.
Okay. So you take care.
Thank you. And thanks again for being so nice as to, at the last minute, jump on here and be on the show with me.
Yeah, we work good together.
Yeah, yes, we do. I appreciate that. And for everybody else out there, always remember the usual warnings apply. Do not poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck wedgie. Don't flip off mountain giants. And whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee. No. Goodbye, everybody.
Holy shit.